Well, a delegation of West African leaders arrived in Guinea on Friday. Ivory Coast President Alassane Ouattara and Ghana's President Nana Akufo-Addo met coup leader Mamadi Doumbouya for some analysis. We're now joined by international law expert Dr. Innocent Badasu. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Always good to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
All right, from the outset, one gets a sense that Guinea has been treated slightly differently to the way they managed Mali, and that Mali's only being brought back into the equation because of Guinea.
Absolutely. We have seen a situation where, even if you look at the nature of the summit, within the last 2 weeks, we've had 2 summits on Guinea, and the kind of approach that have been adopted seems somehow different from the situation we have in Mali. Increasingly, what you get is that leaders within the ECOWAS sub-region want to send a strong signal that despite all manner of difficulties in relation to governance, which sometimes may not reflect the everyday aspirations of the people within the community, that is the ECOWAS community, coup remains an issue that the African leaders would not entertain. And in international law, increasingly, we are making the effort to refer to zero tolerance for coups in Africa as a violation of customary international law. As to whether indeed it has attained the full status of customary international law at the regional level is also another debate out there. But these state practices, these state actions in relation to the coup is indicative of a consistent level of commitment towards ensuring that indeed we have a civilian regime across Africa.
Could the difference might it be that in Mali there were already people on the streets, and it seemed as if this was a popular move on behalf of the people, whereas in Guinea we're not quite sure exactly who and what and why is behind this?
Yes, you have a situation where coup leaders have become quite popular, especially in the Malian contexts. Then again, even in Guinea, we saw some kind of celebration that accompanied the coup d'etat in the early hours and few days after the coup d'etat. But increasingly, the reality is setting in where the people are beginning to realize that the way to go is not to remain under military rule for an extended period of time. It was somehow shocking that ECOWAS believes that these things can be resolved within the next 6 months. And for me, that is quite shocking. You would expect that all the practical considerations would have been weighed before making those authoritative decisions. Now, the risk is that if you demand for presidential and legislative elections within 6 months, and consequently you fail, what it means is that you lose legitimacy as an authority, and you lose legitimacy as a neutral arbiter to be able to intervene in some of these situations. So I am quite worried. ECOWAS has gone for such a swift response with limited time, without looking at some of the practical challenges that may be coming along the period of negotiation with the military leaders at the moment.
I mean, I suppose the danger with this kind of situation is if you don't stop it straight away and say, listen, Alpha Conde comes back into power and you start sorting out elections, what can happen in the future is that whenever they get tired of any leader, there's a coup, knowing that all that will happen is that for a few months there'll be an inconvenience and then there'll be new elections. Surely that can't be the precedent that ECOWAS wants to set, because they seem to be negotiating with people that have pulled off coups.
Yes. I indicated before that indeed, for as long as the coup takes place, it's almost difficult. If you look at what is happening at the moment, even though the ECOWAS summit ended and 2 heads of states have visited. They've been received with a guard of honor. There is an indication of effective control by the military regime. And so it's almost difficult to do anything about this except to negotiate. Yes, I do agree that you must take some radical measures to deter future coup leaders from attempting to overthrow constitutional regimes. I do agree. Now, the way to go for me, I think that ECOWAS is underutilizing its own capacity. And it's quite strange and surprising that that option is not being on the table at the moment. It is not sufficient for you to visit. It is not sufficient for you to impose, if you like, travel bans and asset freezes. These sanctions by themselves do not necessarily result in a change of behavior. Increasingly, we saw how ECOWAS intervened in the Gambian situation. We saw how ECOWAS intervened in the Ivorian situation. I am wondering if it is the same ECOWAS that is operating in Mali and it is the same ECOWAS that is operating in Guinea. And so I strongly believe when you look at ECOWAS's conflict resolution mechanisms and peace-building architecture, there is enough mechanism for these matters to be resolved. But surprisingly, they are underutilizing that capacity, which for me, it's very disturbing.
What incentive is there for these junta leaders to move and move quickly? Because the longer they stay in power, the more tempting it is to stay on.
Yes, the longer they stay, the more tempting it is to stay on. That is very true. The risk is there. But the reality also remains that if you get them out in a manner that is not really comprehensive, you risk them returning or other group of soldiers returning, which we have seen in Mali. They rushed the process, and then there was a counter coup, and then there was also the return of Kenogweta. So you need to act in a very comprehensive manner to be able to deal with the problem. At the moment, the coup leader seems to be very popular with the Guinean people, with all the measures that he's undertaking. And so that makes it quite complicated for ECOWAS to be able to move in and immediately get a resolution on the matter. And so, yes, you need to deter future coup leaders or coup makers, but you must also be practical in your approach to the current situation that you have at hand.
Is the Malian leaders, are they now on notice based on what's playing out in Guinea and how ECOWAS is dealing with them?
Yes, there is an indication. If you look at the communique that was issued, there is an indication to impose sanctions when there is a further delay in the deadline in relation to the election that is supposed to be held sometime next year, February 2022. Again, when you look at the challenges currently and the news that is coming from Mali and all the other sources that are giving us some kind of information, there is no appetite for election in Mali in February 2020. It's simply because the needed conditions for free and fair elections are not met. And so, again, I am wondering whether ECOWAS simply want anything to represent elections, or we are committed to ensuring that we have free and fair and transparent elections, such that you resolve the problem with a comprehensive approach.
All right, very complex issues, and only time will tell how they'll get solved. But thanks so much indeed for joining us this evening and sharing your insights with us. Thank you, Dr. Badasu.
Thank you very much.